The U.S. government has frozen the financial assets of more than a dozen drug cartel members and some Mexico-based businesses known for trafficking drugs into Arizona and the U.S. For more on this story, we welcome Arizona Attorney General Kris Mayes. General Mayes, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ted.
I want to get to that story.
Okay.
But I want to start with something else.
Okay.
Because I feel like it's a story that's just about to happen. You tell me, the fake electors investigation, where are you?
So I appreciate this question, and you ask me pretty much every time I come on. You know, we, as I've said and made clear, we are investigating the fake electors scheme, and that investigation is ongoing, and you know, we'll have something to say fairly soon about that. I understand the frustration and the desire to know more right now, but it just wouldn't be appropriate for me to say much more than that. So we'll update everybody as soon as we have something to talk about.
Well, I know that a state senator, Kern, yesterday, I believe, went out and had a brief, interesting press conference, though brief, and he basically said he's being persecuted by you and others, and I'm pretty sure he's talking about this particular case. How do you respond to this idea that you're targeting him?
Yeah, well, we don't, you know, I'm not going to discuss what Mr. Kern had to say, and, you know, it just wouldn't be appropriate for me to talk about it. And, you know, obviously, he said what he said. That's a matter of public record, but I'm not going to discuss it, and I'm not going to comment on it.
So when he says that you're suppressing his exercise of the rule of law, you're suppressing his ability to protect the Constitution, and you're part of weaponizing the government, you say?
Well, we're definitely not weaponizing the government, and you know, we are, as I've said all along, conducting a professional investigation into the fake elector scheme, and that involves me allowing our lawyers, our investigators, to do their job. And again, as I said, we'll have more to talk about soon.
Let me ask one more question on this.
Sure.
Does the fact that this is an election season and that we are in the middle of primaries and soon to be general elections, does that factor into your timetable?
I mean, I think it'd be disingenuous to say that it doesn't. And I'm very aware of the elections, you know, sort of calendar playing out here. On the other hand, we want to do a fulsome, professional investigation. I think justice demands that. The people of Arizona deserve that. So we've got to sort of balance those two things. But yeah, I'm certainly cognizant of that.
All right, let's get back to this financial assets, these frozen 15 members of Sinaloa, 6 Mexican-based businesses. This deals with fentanyl trafficking in particular, or is there more going on here?
Yeah, it's primarily aimed at attacking the fentanyl crisis that we have in this country, and especially in Arizona. You know, the Mexican drug cartels, Ted, are using Arizona like their own personal postal service. They are bringing fentanyl across the border. In 2022, we know that more than half of all the fentanyl seized in the United States was seized in Arizona. In 2023, it looks like it was even worse. And so I am very glad that the Biden administration, and in particular the Treasury Department, decided to take this step. And I joined him at a press conference to announce this, of targeting the cartels where it hurts the most, which is their money and their assets, and they're going to freeze those assets and essentially sanction these entities, Ted, the same way we did with the Russians with regard to Ukraine.
I was going to say, this reminds me a lot of that situation.
Exactly. Very, very similar to that. So we need this, but we need more from the federal government. You know, I was down on the border recently with Representative Ruben Gallego talking about the fact that we need, you know, Congress passed or failed to pass a bipartisan package that it had before it to deal with our border crisis. And we've got scanners that would detect fentanyl that are sitting in a warehouse right now on the border, Ted, that because that bipartisan package didn't pass, because Republicans wouldn't pass it, because Donald Trump said don't pass it, we can't get those scanners installed at the border right now. It is absolutely absurd. So we need the federal government and especially Congress to act now to help us with the border.
I want to get back to this frozen assets aspect, though. As far as money laundering is concerned, how much money is getting laundered, especially here in Arizona?
I mean, it's really hard to tell. An enormous amount of money, and and it's being done in very creative ways. And we know that the money, is being wired to Mexico, but it's also being transferred in other creative ways, cell phones, those types of things, Bitcoin, cryptocurrency. And so it's really important for the Treasury Department to be very, very aggressive in attacking these various ways that the Mexican drug cartels use to get money back to Mexico.
And last question on this, you referred to what's going on down at the border, having been down there and seen all the resources that aren't being used for a variety of reasons. There are other resources that state lawmakers want to use, and that is local law enforcement and local courts. How do you feel about that?
So I wouldn't go as far as the legislators that you're talking about would go. But I will say this, I understand the frustration that is felt, especially by our border sheriffs like Sheriff Daniels in Cochise County, Sheriff Hathaway, who I spent the day with the other day in Nogales. And I do think there's things, if the federal government can't get its act together, that we ought to deputize local law enforcement to do. For instance, I'll give you an example. I think that we know that the drug cartels are sending drones across the border. And they're dropping fentanyl using drones, believe it or not. Sometimes those drones make it 30 miles or so inside Arizona. I think the sheriffs should be able to and be allowed to, if the federal government can't do it, take those drones down.
Are they not allowed to right now?
No.
A drone is 30 miles, 50 miles in. A drone's flying over my house.
Not this far, but 30 miles into Arizona. They've been detected. And if the federal government can't get that under control, then we need to allow local law enforcement, and that would probably mean a border sheriff to do it. That's a small example, but I think what you're seeing is frustration bubbling over at Congress and the federal government, and we need them to do more.
Before you go, filed a lawsuit against 9 prominent landlords and a software company regarding basically a price-fixing scheme with rents. Real quickly, what is this all about? So
this is about a company called RealPage and 9 huge landlords in Arizona, like Graystar and Trammell Crow. And basically what they were doing was they were using an algorithm developed by RealPage, and these landlords would input all of their competitive data into this RealPage-owned algorithm, and RealPage would spit out a rent that all of them would abide by. So essentially, it was old-fashioned price fixing, utilizing new technology.
Yeah.
And it violates our antitrust laws, and it violates the Consumer Fraud Act, and that's why I filed a lawsuit against all of them.
Aren't the software company, I believe, is facing lawsuits in other states or regions, correct?
Class action lawsuits, yes. And the AG of the District of Columbia also filed a lawsuit like mine. Ted, hundreds of thousands of Arizonans paid much higher rent than they should have, and I want to get their money back.
But how does this happen in a world where there's Zillow and Realtor.com and For Rent by Owner? I mean, it would seem, where's the invisible hand of the market here?
Well, that's the point. There was no market. There was no competitive market because these landlords were all outsourcing the setting of the rent to an algorithm and to RealPage. There was no competition. It used to be, if you had one landlord over here and another landlord over here, that they might compete with one another, and lower prices to try to attract you.
Right.
Say you're a renter, that one would lower their prices. Well, now they're not even trying to compete with one another. They are colluding to set the same high rent. They don't even care about occupancy rates anymore.
These must be awfully prominent then if they're taking up that much. I mean, if that collusion can spread that far, That's odd.
It's huge. I mean, we believe that at least 70% of all the rental units in Phoenix, for instance, are in buildings that are controlled by this RealPage algorithm, and it's more than 50% in Tucson.
Attorney General Kris Mayes, good to have you here.
Thanks,
Great speaking with you.
Ditto. Thank you.